Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to Savvy Ladies for inviting me to present today on leveraging LinkedIn for your job search. Just a little bit about me. I own my own company, Geffen Careers, and I'm a career coach. I trained with Get5, and I still have clients from Get5, the Whitehawk Group, which is another outplacement company. And I'm also working with Vesta, a new vision for divorce. It is an organization that provides free resources, information, and webinars for people contemplating divorce, going through divorce, or post divorce, as well as referrals to professionals. So, my background, I have had 13 job changes and 3 career changes. So, not only do I talk the talk, but I can walk the walk, mostly in teaching, continuing education, online learning, distance learning, and association management. So, today's agenda: what is LinkedIn? How do you create your LinkedIn profile? What are some of the ways that you can use LinkedIn for your job search? And how you can expand your network using LinkedIn. So let's dive in. I'll be stopping at every 10 minutes or so after a section. So if you have questions about those topics, please feel free to chime in and write your question in the chat box. And then again, at the end, we will have time for Q&A. So what is LinkedIn? Oops, sorry. It's a professional networking tool. It's a promotional tool. It's a recruiting tool. People who are working or looking for jobs are on LinkedIn. Recruiters and hiring managers are also doing searches on LinkedIn to find people, to find suitable candidates. So everybody knows you need to have a LinkedIn profile. Recruiters, search firms, hiring managers are all on LinkedIn, trolling for candidates using search terms or what's called a Boolean search. So there are some things that are similar between your LinkedIn profile and your resume. First, both your LinkedIn profile and your resume are advertisements for you. They brand you as an expert in your field, a successful professional in your field. The second thing that LinkedIn and resumes have in common is they list your accomplishments. They list your previous work history. They list your education, any conferences you've attended, any publications. And the third thing that they have in common is that they're both reviewed by hiring managers, search firms, recruiters, and potential employers. So those are the 3 ways that LinkedIn and your resume are similar. But that's where the similarity ends. So what are some of the differences? The tone. As you know, a resume is formal. It's written in the third person. You never use the word I in your resume. LinkedIn is a little more personal. In the About section, when you write about yourself, you can use I. I'm passionate about making computers dance. I am passionate about designing websites. Photograph. If you don't have a photograph on your LinkedIn profile, you really don't exist, because people may think, well, who is this person? Is this person real? So you do need a photograph, and it should be a professional photograph, not a selfie. Perhaps you have someone you know, a friend, a colleague, a family member who's good at taking photographs and they can take a photograph of you. Or if not, you might wish to use a professional photographer who specializes in headshots, because you don't want a whole full body portrait. You want your head and your shoulders, and that's it. You want to be smiling and facing the camera. The third thing that distinguishes your LinkedIn profile from your resume are the recommendations. Now, years ago, we always had to put references on our resume. No longer. We never put anyone's name and contact information who is a reference on our resume. On LinkedIn, however, you will need 3 to 4 recommendations, or maybe 5 or more, from people who know you and your work. It could be a former colleague, a teammate. It could be a former manager or supervisor, or it could be someone who worked for you. What are the parts of your LinkedIn profile? This is extremely important. Under your name is empty space called the headline. And the headline has room for 220 characters. What does that mean? You can put in a lot of words there. So I have on mine career coach, trainer, educator, author, Vesta, savvy ladies. You can put in key skills. You can put in the type of job titles you're looking for. 220 characters is about 3 lines under your name. Then the about section. The about section is a summary. It has 2,000 characters. It's an open text field, and there is space for you to write the equivalent of a single space typing page. That's one full page, single spaced. That's a lot of real estate. So it's a good idea to take advantage of that about section by writing paragraphs, not just bulleted statements, but you can write paragraphs about your accomplishments. You can include keywords. You can also include some contact information, even though there's another place on LinkedIn for your contact information. Then work history. Sorry. Work history is just like your resume. It includes the name of the company, your job title, the years you worked there, and there is again an open text field for a description. And in that description, you might wish to put in bulleted accomplishments. And we're going to get to accomplishments soon, and I'll explain how you can write about your accomplishments. And then the next piece are those recommendations. It's really important to have recommendations. And the people who recommend you must also be on LinkedIn with his or her own profile. You cannot ask someone for recommendation on LinkedIn if that person does not have his or her own LinkedIn profile. So think about the people who you would like to recommend you and make sure they have a LinkedIn profile. And you go to their profile and you request a recommendation, and it will ask you, what is your relationship to this person and where did you work with this person, and a few other things. Now, you know that you don't only have to have one resume. If you're going for a couple of different jobs or job titles, you can have several different resumes. However, you can have only one LinkedIn profile. So you need to put in everything you want to say about yourself in the LinkedIn profile. Unlike the resume, which is tailored to a specific job title. Before you update your LinkedIn profile, I suggest that you create what you want to say in a Word document. Review the document, edit the document, make sure it sounds like what you want to sound like, make sure there are no typographical errors before you cut and paste into LinkedIn. And the other thing you want to do is to restrict access. That is, you go into your your own profile, account settings. And in the account settings, you're going to click on what makes it visible or communications. You don't want people to know about your changes. Every time you make a change or an addition or an edit, you don't want anyone to know about that. So you can turn that off under settings and privacy. Then you're going to write your profile. You put it in a Word doc. And then when you're ready, then you can cut and paste from your Word document into the actual LinkedIn profile. Then you want to open up access so that everybody can take a look at it. You want to build your network. You want to join groups. And if you are looking for work, you want to say open to opportunities, open to consulting. So the 5 important parts of your LinkedIn profile: your job title, your heading, as we mentioned, 220 characters. It can fit in a lot of your key skills. The about section, 2,000 characters. Concentrate on what you're passionate about and pick 2 or 3 or 4 of your accomplishments and say a few sentences in detail about those accomplishments. the recommendations, and keywords. Now, you can use keywords in 3 places in your LinkedIn profile. You can use the keywords in your heading under your name. You can use the keywords in your about section, and you can use the keywords in your job descriptions. So, the heading is probably the most important part. Why? Because searches will use keywords from the heading. If you're not working and you don't have a job title, put in your job target. Your job target is the title of the job you're going for. Project manager, executive assistant, director of professional development. Add your keywords. Now, in your heading, you don't have to say looking for the next opportunity or seeking a position as. And there's a reason why you don't need to put out there you're looking. Often employers are not happy with people who are looking. They are prejudiced against people who are not working. So they want to look for people who are working. Something to think about. Now, let me take a look in the chat. There may be some questions. Oh, no, okay. Those are the links. Those are the links. Okay, no problem. The about section. Now, if you're a good writer, you can write this yourself. If you feel your writing skills are not the best, you may wish to work with a coach or a writer who can help you craft your about section. Your first paragraph should be personal. I am passionate about, and tell them something about what you like to do and what your best skills are. Your accomplishments. Here are some highlights of my recent accomplishments. Paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. And how to contact you. Once again, there is a contact link on top near your name, and you can also put your contact information, email, phone number in the about section. Okay, I'm going to stop here to see if there are any questions, because now we're going to get into how to talk about accomplishments. So if you have a question, you can type it into the chat, or you can unmute yourself and say it out loud. Let me know. I'll wait a couple of seconds, and see if anyone has a question at this stage. All right, let's move on. I talk a lot about accomplishments.
Well, Amy, I'm sorry, just question popped up just as you said.
Good. Yes.
Will
We'll
you be
giving specific examples of how things could be worded. Yes, Teresa, I will be giving you specific examples. Okay, good question to segue into accomplishments. I spend a lot of time with my clients talking about, practicing, and writing about accomplishments. I use the PAR approach. Some people use the SOAR approach. It's the same thing. What was the problem you had to solve? What were the circumstances under which you were solving this problem? What action or actions did you take? What did you actually do? And what was the result? So PAR stands for problem, action, result. So I'm going to give you some examples. Oops, that happened. My goodness. Okay. All right. So here's some, I don't know why it keeps changing. Okay. I don't know why it keeps flipping. I'm not doing anything. Okay. Successfully manage partnerships. Well, it doesn't tell you very much. And we don't like to use the word successful without some details. So some people are salespeople and they say, oh, I'm a successful salesperson. What does that mean? How much money did you make? How many sales did you make? How many clients did you get? So another way to put this is managed events with over 25 industry associations and achieved a 60% increase in strategic partnerships. Notice it starts with a verb, managed. It includes the number of associations. It includes a percentage of partnerships. See how much more detail is in this one. Let's look at number 2. Developed and published metrics to increase call center productivity. All right, well, but by how much? A better way to say the same thing. Developed metrics, which were posted daily, and within the first month, productivity increased by 33% and call length dropped by 15%. Starting the sentence with a verb, develop metrics. Showed the percentage of increase in productivity. Showed the percentage in the drop in the length of the call. Obviously, if you're in a call center, you want to reach as many people as possible and spend as little time as possible to help them solve their problems. Let's look at the third example. Led a team of 10 staff people to design a conference. Okay, so what? That's more of a job description. You design conferences. Here's a better way of saying the same thing. Led a team of 10 to design and implement the first India Oil and Gas Conference, resulting in 150 attendees. This happens to be one of my accomplishments when I was at the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. We had 18 months to plan this conference, and I went to New Delhi, India for the conference. So, any questions on accomplishments? This is a very important part of your resume. You're going to make a list of your own accomplishments and write them up in the PAR fashion and use them in your cover letter, in your resume, in your LinkedIn profile, and during the interview. Keywords must reflect your job target. They must appear in the summary and in your work history. Once again, I'll keep saying this, hiring managers and recruiters are searching by keywords on LinkedIn to find candidates. So you want to be that person whom they find on LinkedIn. Okay. Now, having a LinkedIn profile, that said, doesn't necessarily mean you're a job seeker. You don't have to say you're looking. There's a bias against people who are unemployed. There's a bias against people who are actively looking. That said, you may wish to put in open to opportunities. You can put it around your photograph and see if that garners more attention. See if you get more people contacting you or fewer people. If it's not working, you can take it off. A lot of search firms are looking for people who are not looking for a job. They want to hire someone away from another company, and they're going to contact you. So think about that. You can try it both ways. Try it for a couple of weeks, showing that you're open to opportunities. See what that garners in terms of approaches from recruiters or hiring managers. If it's not working, then just take it off. So 6 ways that you can use LinkedIn, and we're going to go through each of these very carefully. You can get noticed by search firms and employers. You can search for companies and get information about companies on LinkedIn. Not only do companies have their own websites, companies often have a LinkedIn profile site. You can research your interviewer. What do you know about the person on the other side of the desk who's asking you questions? If you get their name in advance of an interview, you can look that person up on the LinkedIn profile and find out, who is this person? Where have they worked? What is their background? Where did they go to school? You can join groups that are only available on LinkedIn, groups that are for people in your profession or for people who you'd like to meet in your profession. And you can build your network. Alumni from your high school, your college, your graduate school, professionals who are in your field. And you can also make yourself visible by writing a blog, writing an article, or commenting on someone else's article. So, searching for companies, find the company's page. You want to know, what is the company's mission? What is their vision? What are their goals? When you go to the LinkedIn page for the company, it will show you people under the name of the company. A little further down, it'll show people and jobs. You don't want to look for the jobs. You want to look for people. Then you want to scroll down and see who are the people who are working or heading a department where you want to work. Scroll down, see their photographs, see who they are, and then you can decide if you would like to connect to that person. And you ask for a connection. And you ask for a connection, don't say, I'm looking for a job. You ask for a connection and you can write a little note. And in the note, you can say, I'd love to get your career advice. I'd like to connect to you. I'm interested in learning more about your company. I'd like to connect. And then if the person is willing to connect, then in your second message, you can say, I'd like your career advice. You still haven't said you're looking for a job yet. Now, how do you research your interviewer? Some of my clients have said, oh, I have an interview tomorrow. I said, so who's it with? Oh, they didn't tell me. I said, didn't you ask? Whenever you have an interview, find out the name and the title of the person who is going to be interviewing you and look that person up on LinkedIn. And you can see where they've worked before. You can see where they've gone to school. Maybe they've written up their hobbies, their interests. Find out if you have anything at all in common with this person, which could be a good thing, or it could be used as a little conversation starter during the interview. Join groups that are only available on LinkedIn. That's the thing about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is for professionals. It's not Facebook. It's not Meetup. All right. It's not for people to socialize. It's for people who are in a profession, are looking for resources, are looking for colleagues, are looking for teammates, vendors, sources. This is all about expanding your network and getting noticed. So if you join a group and you get involved, you can post comments, you can ask questions. You may not even have a comment. You may just have a question, but it puts your name out there in that group. Write a blog, an article, or make a comment. So once you have your LinkedIn profile up and you're very happy with it, don't just sit there passively waiting for people to come to you. Post a comment. Post a comment to someone else's comment or someone else's blog. Write an article about your particular field. It doesn't have to be long, short, 250, 500 words. It doesn't have to be long. Become a thought leader. What does that mean? That means that you are become a source of information, of expertise in your field. And so people will want to connect to you. Ideally, you want to have at least 500 connections on LinkedIn. You want to have at least 500 connections on LinkedIn. Now, how are you going to get those connections? All right, well, I'll get there in a minute. How are you going to get those connections? You can go to your college or university profile on LinkedIn, and you can look up alumni by year, by city in which they live, by the major they majored in college, by the company they're working for. So if you have created a list of companies where you would like to work, you go into your LinkedIn university or college or even high school, and you look up the alumni from certain years, let's say from 2000 to 2020, or 2000 to 2010, or 1990 to 2010, and see where they live and where they work. And if they work at a company where you would like to work, you can ask to connect to that person. So with an alum, what you want to do in your first connection is first message. Oh, I see we're both alumni from NYU, or we're both alumni from CUNY, or we're both alumni from University of California, San Francisco. Okay. Then if the person is willing to connect, in your second message, you can say, I'm in the blank field, fill in the blank. I'd love to get your career advice. And then you say, do you have time to set up a 10-minute phone call? The object of connecting to people on LinkedIn, particularly alumni or people in your field, is to get a conversation going where you can learn about them and their company and their career path, and you can tell them about you and your career path and what you are looking for now. So privacy settings, we talked a little bit about this. You go to your account, you go into privacy, you click on no for notifying contacts about changes in your profile. You can click on job seeking. You can let recruiters know that you're open to opportunities, and you can decide whether you want a recruiter to be able to see your profile. That's all up to you, and it's all in the settings. Okay. Questions? We're going to go on to networking. Any questions? Don't be shy. Okay. Let's see. Who is in your network? I'll preface my remarks by saying this. There are really only 4 ways to find a job. One is answer ads on the internet. ZipRecruiter, Monster.com, Idealist, Indeed, applying online. That's not the best way to find a job for several reasons. 80% of the jobs are not advertised. Fewer than 10% of people actually get a job applying online. And there are thousands of people who look at the ad and maybe 100 people apply and maybe 25 resumes are picked. And you've got to go through this applicant tracking system. So don't spend all your time doing that. Second way to find a job is through a recruiter. Recruiters are good if you are in a specific field at a mid to upper level. However, the recruiter doesn't work for you. The recruiter works for the company that is paying them to find the best candidate. So that's the second way, and it's not the best way. So that leaves 2 more ways to find a job. One is writing directly to a hiring manager, and we will get to that in a few minutes. And the other is networking. So that's why I spend a lot of time with people coaching them on how to grow their network. So start with who's in your network to begin with. Your family, you start with your family, your friends, coworkers, former supervisors, former managers, former teammates, former vendors, former resource, your personal accountant, your personal lawyer, hairdresser, trainer, dog walker, you name it. Everyone you know are the people in your network. And just because those people don't work in your field doesn't mean that they don't know people in your field. So part of your job in your job search is to reconnect with all these people. How do you expand your network on LinkedIn? You've got first degree contacts. These are the people who you are already connected with. Then you've got second degree contacts. Those people have some contacts. And they can, the first degree contacts whom you know can introduce you to the second degree contacts. And those contacts have their own contacts. That's third degree contacts. So there are a lot of people out there whom you do not know right now. And by connecting to them and asking for introductions, you can meet those people. So first, you contact your first degree contacts. You say you're in transition. You'd like to get some career advice. You set up a meeting, a phone call, a Zoom call, a Skype call, FaceTime. You give your pitch. You share your list of companies and you ask your contact, do you know someone in any of these companies whom you can introduce me to? And then you also ask them, well, can you think of another company or organization that I can add to my list? As a job seeker, you need to keep 2 lists, one of everyone you know and new contacts, and the other of all the companies where you want to work. And when you contact people and have your little meetings, then you want to ask them if they can introduce you to someone at one of those companies. Second degree contacts. Okay, so in LinkedIn, you look at your first degree contacts. Is there anyone that you want to be introduced to? Those are your second degree contacts. So you ask the person you know to make the introduction. A good way to make an introduction is this. The person you know writes an email to you and to their friend introducing the 2 of you. It's not enough for your friend to say, oh, I'll give them your email address, or oh, I'll give them your phone number. That doesn't work because you are not in a position to follow up. You want to get that person's name, phone number, and email. And the best way to get it is to ask your first degree contact to make the connection, make the introduction through email or through LinkedIn. Now you're meeting people who are your second degree contacts. You didn't know them before, but you were introduced to them. Now you're meeting them and you show them your list of companies. Do you know anybody who works at any of these companies? Can you make an introduction? That introduction now is your third degree contacts. So you can increase your contacts very rapidly by contacting your first degrees and asking for introductions. My suggestion is that you try to contact 5 people a day. Alumni. All right. This is a great way to find people. Alumni, unlike strangers, alumni are 95% likely to respond to you, to be willing to help you, because after all, you both went to the same school, whether it's a high school, a college, a graduate school. You're going to look for your college on LinkedIn. You're going to click on the word alumni, on the city, on the major, on the company. If you give me a minute here, I can do that. Let's see. I'm going to stop the share for a moment, and I am going to go to LinkedIn. No, see, this isn't working. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to show you how to do this on LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com. Okay. Now, I am going to share my screen, and I'm just going to show you how you would find somebody from your school. So here I am, and here's the search box. You start with the search box in the upper corner. So I graduated from Brooklyn College, undergraduate, CUNY. I also graduated from Harvard. I also graduated from NYU. So I got lots of places to look for alumni. So to make it easier, so I'll just start with Brooklyn College. I want to go to their website on LinkedIn. Here it is, Brooklyn College. Now, underneath the name, you have home, about, posts, jobs, alumni. You want to find the word alumni. I click on alumni. Okay, let's say I want to meet people not from 1900. They'll be dead, okay? So let's say, let's say for the heck of it, 1980, fine, because there's 86,000 alumni. So now if I pick 1980, that'll cut down the number of alumni. 60,000, that's still a lot. New York City area, well, of course, because most of us are in New York anyway. Okay, that cuts it down. Where do they work? Now, here's the key. Let's say I wanted to work in health. All right, so a bunch of them are in Maimonides. A bunch of them are at Northwell Health. All right, so let's look at Maimonides just for the heck of it. All right, so you got 116 people who work at Maimonides. So now when I scroll down the page, I can see all these people who are working at Maimonides. Now, do I want to be introduced to all of them? No. I want to be introduced to someone who's a little bit above me, right? Who's in a position to hire me. So guess what? I'm going to change this to 2000. I don't want people who are recent graduates. I want people who are older. I don't want someone who's, 25. I want someone who's 35, 40, 45. So, okay, that cut it down. And now there's only 26 people at Maimonides. All right, that makes it manageable. So I'm going to go down the page and see, well, who are these 26 people? Okay, there's someone in individual giving. There's someone in computers and information. There's someone in finance. So I would pick the person in the field that I'm interested in. If I'm interested in finance, I want to get introduced to Richard. So I would click on connect, and I would add a note. I would add a note and say, "Hi, Richard." Call them by the first name. "We are both alumni from Brooklyn College. I would like to connect to you on LinkedIn." Just very simple. That's all. Richard doesn't know anything about you yet. "I would like to connect to you on LinkedIn." And you can put your name and your email address. I'm not going to send this, but then you would send it. I'm not going to send it. That's your first message. Let's say Richard is willing to connect to you. Okay, he connects. So now the two of you connected. And then you say, "Hi, Richard. I would love to get your career advice. Do you have time for a 10-minute chat?" Just 10 minutes. Now, trust me, when someone starts talking to you, they're going to be on the phone for 15, 20 minutes, maybe even a half an hour. But that's what you want to do in the second connection, the second message. "Hi, Richard. I'd love to get your career advice. Do you have time for a 10-minute chat?" All right. I'm not going to send this one either. So that is how you find alumni who are working in the field that you want to work in. Let's say you're in banking. Morgan Stanley. 43 people are working at Morgan Stanley. Let's see who those people are. Okay. Accountants. Maybe you're an accountant. A lot of people. 2000, 1999. You're looking for someone who has an executive director, a vice president, someone at a level, one or two levels above the job you're going for. Now, you have to know that at banks, a lot of people are vice presidents. Different from other companies. Other companies have a few. Banks have a lot of vice presidents. But in any case, okay, let's say you want to find out who this person is. You can click on that person's name and say, okay, what does he do? And then you can look at that person's profile to see, is that the person you really want to connect to? All right, now let me get back to this. Okay, so that is how you would find alumni, and that is a wonderful way for you to increase your connections, meet new people, learn about your field, and see if you can get in for information interviews. We did this. We click on the name of the school, click on alumni, narrow it down, date of graduation, city of residence, subject they majored in, or company. Okay. Now, how do you connect to professionals in your field? Well, the best way is to belong to a professional association. What does that mean? Well, if you're a lawyer, there's the American Bar Association. If you're a doctor, there's the American Medical Association. There's an association for every single profession. I was an association executive, and I belong to the New York Society for Association Executives. I belonged to it for 20 years. It was a great resource for me to meet colleagues, to learn about what they were doing in their organizations. And then when it came time for me to find a job, I had people I could talk to and who could recommend me. And in fact, one of the women in the association ran a recruiting company, Professionals for Nonprofits, and I was able to get a couple of jobs through her. So a professional organization may have some free events for you. They may have some free resources. They may also have a profile on LinkedIn with the members, and you can ask to connect to members from your association. Now, if you don't have the money to pay to join, as I said, they may have a lot of free resources and you can find people online. And then once again, ask to connect, and once again, ask for a 10-minute phone call. How are you going to get the meetings? Let's say you find somebody and you really want a meeting with this person. You want to get introduced, first of all, and you can write to this hiring manager. The hiring manager is 1 to 2 levels above your title. And then you follow up with a phone call. So, 2 ways. There's direct emails and targeted. Direct emails, let's say you have a list of 100 companies or 200 companies. You cannot call all those companies. So you're going to send an email with the first paragraph that says, oh, I'm interested in working in your finance department as a forensic accountant. And your second paragraph is your pitch. I have 10 years experience doing XYZ. My best skills are 1, 2, 3. Your third paragraph. Here are some of my recent accomplishments. Bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3. Fourth paragraph. I would welcome the opportunity to discuss how I might contribute to meeting the bottom line of name of the company. Or if it's a not-for-profit, I would welcome the opportunity to discuss how I can help you meet your mission. Okay. That's it. You write it and you can attach your resume and you hope they call you. Now, for your top 10 or 20 companies, these are the A list of companies that you would give your eye teeth to work for. You're going to write a similar email, and at the end, you're going to say you're going to call. That's the difference. So for these companies, you need to have not only the email address of a hiring manager, you also need a phone number. So again, your first paragraph, I'm writing you to become a such and such a person at your company. I have over X years of experience. Here are some of my accomplishments. I'd love to meet with you for 15 minutes at a mutually agreeable time, and I shall call you in a day or two to set up a meeting. Only use this email if you have the person's phone number. You must call within 24 to 48 hours. Now, what's going to happen when you call? You'll usually get the administrative assistant or the executive assistant. If someone is a managing director or vice president, he or she is not going to pick up his phone, generally, or her phone. Don't leave a message. Say, when do you expect Mr. So-and-so? When do you expect Ms. So-and-so? And you may have to call before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m. And if you get an assistant who asks, well, what's this in reference to you? You know, leave your name and number. You say, this is about an email I sent to Mr. So-and-so or Ms. And they are expecting my call. Why? Because it may take you 5 or 10 phone calls, believe it or not, to actually reach the person. And so you can't keep leaving your name and number because it looks like you're stalking them. And you certainly don't want to be labeled as a stalker. So let's say you get a meeting, you meet with the person, then what? You keep in touch, you keep in the loop. Even for the people who you're just connecting to on LinkedIn through your school or through your profession, even if they're not getting you introduced to people, you have to keep in touch with them every 4 to 6 weeks, not every day, not every week. That's too much. Let them know what's going on. Let them know how your job search is going. Keep emailing them and keep meeting new people. So, summary, do's and don'ts for your LinkedIn profile. Do use your heading, the 220 characters. I just was talking to one of my clients today who just put in a job title. It's not enough. Why waste the space? Okay, you need to put in other things, whether you're good at communicating, translating, program management, project management, team building. Use a recent photo and make sure it's professional. As I said, don't use a selfie. Dress professionally. It's only from the neck up. Smile, face the camera, have your hair done, your face done. You want to look good. Do show your accomplishments in 2 places, in the about section and in the positions, the description of your job positions. Use bullets. Have your summary statement. Be specific. As we mentioned, talk about your accomplishments by showing results. And please proofread. We can't proofread our own stuff. Get a friend, relative to read it. Make sure you don't have any typographical errors. Do get 3 to 4 recommendations or more if you can, because you might have to ask 5 or 6 people before you get 3 or 4 recommendations. People can be very nice and they say, oh yeah, I love working with you. I'll be happy to write it. And then 2 weeks later, they haven't written it because people are busy. So don't be surprised if you may have to ask 5 or 6 people to get your 3 or 4 recommendations. And then of course, keywords, keywords, keywords. Now, don'ts. Not so many don'ts, but don't put in your street address. Don't put in volunteer work unless it's relevant. What does that mean? All right. So my background is, as I mentioned, in nonprofit management. I worked at associations. And when I was out of work, I did some volunteering for the Taproot Foundation. Taproot is another not-for-profit that provides nonprofits with consulting skills. So I worked with the El Barrio, El Museo del Barrio in the Upper East Side on a group project to help them recruit people for their board. I worked with Downtown Community TV on a strategic planning project. And so I put those into my resume because the work I did was directly related to what I would be doing on a job in associations. Dates from education. Now, there's lots of debates about that. If you have graduated within the last 10 years, you can put your date of graduation from college. No need to put in your high school. They assume if you were in college, you already graduated high school. You don't need to put in the name and the date of your high school graduation. I use that with my college students because, yes, they've done a lot of things in high school that may be relevant. But for the rest of us, we don't need to put in the high school. Now, anybody who's graduated more than 10 or 15 years ago, don't put in your dates of graduation. Now they'll say, oh yeah, okay, this person is older, but they're not going to they can guess what they want, but they're not going to know how many years older you are. So you don't want to raise any red flags. Leave out your dates of graduation. And of course, no salary information. And that's another whole thing I can talk about, salary negotiation, but not today. You don't mention salary at all. You avoid the discussion until you actually get an offer. So we've reached the end of my remarks and I'm open for questions. Let's see what's in the chat. Any questions in the chat? Yeah, grow your network. Yeah, I almost took myself.
There was a question about what happens when you reach 500 contacts in LinkedIn.
Oh, you get a star. There's something about it that stars you so that your profile comes up higher up on people's searches. I mean, I have I don't know, I've got over 1,000 contacts, but you want to get to 500. There's something about 500 and getting your recommendations that bumps you up on someone's search.
Thank you.
I've been right along there with you, Amy. I was had my LinkedIn open here, and it's been some great information. Looks like there is a question that went just to me, and I'll read that off to you, Amy. Sure. How can I justify that I have been unemployed for a few years?
Okay.
But continued getting courses and certificates related to my career.
Okay. So what you need to do is both in your resume and your LinkedIn profile, you have to add all those certificates. Actually, in LinkedIn, there's a separate section for certificates that's separate from the education section. You can put it in the education section if you wish, or you can put it in the other section, certificates and awards, continuing education. But you also need to think about what else could you put in for that time period, for that gap in work history. Did you do any volunteer work? Did you do any consulting in your field, by whether, even if you didn't get paid for it, if you were talking to colleagues about what you do or giving them advice? Consulting is a very loose area. And so you might want to consider putting that in to fill the gap. I mean, it's always good to go for continuing ed, but they assume, people assume, yeah, that's part of your job. Your job is to keep yourself up to date in your field, whether or not you're working. That's a good question.
And I believe LinkedIn offers some learning as well.
Absolutely.
That you can post.
Absolutely.
So Amy, another question or something to maybe elaborate that you talked about earlier on the presentation. You were saying it's important to give a number to something. I increased sales by 58%. Elaborate a little bit of why it's so important to quantify.
Okay. if you don't quantify anything, then it just sounds like a job responsibility. This is my task. What do I do? My job is to make phone calls every day to clients. My job is to sell cookies. I mean, whatever it is, you don't distinguish yourself from other candidates who have had the same job title and who have done the same thing unless you put in numbers. The other thing about numbers is it makes it memorable. Oh, okay, a number, 50%, 100%, 25, 50, 60, 1,000. It also gives people an idea of the breadth and the depth and the extent of your work. Now, some people will tell me it's very hard for them to use numbers, and that's true. In some fields, you can't use numbers. Even people in education have told me, well, I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, I'm a trainer, I can't use numbers. I said, yes, you can. You can say how many courses you taught, how many webinars you gave, how many people attended, what was the rating you got on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or whatever. So even in teaching and training, you can use numbers. Now, if you can't use a number, you might want to qualify, and you can qualify your answers in this way. Solved a problem that was unresolved by the previous two managers, or um, reduced expenses to be within budget, or solve the problem within 3 weeks, under budget. So you can use words that give a little bit more detail, even though you cannot use a number. Now, some people have said to me, well, I did it 1 or 2 years ago, I don't remember. I said, well, do you know anyone who still works there? Can you call them up and get some information? So the lesson here is this: when you are on a job, keep a diary for yourself, either by hand or on your computer, of things that you've done, and try to include as many details as possible. Because when the time comes for you to change jobs and update your resume and talk about your accomplishments in an interview, then you will have all the data. Once you've left your job, you no longer have access to the computer. You cannot look up all that data. So, lesson learned, keep a diary of what you've done on your job.
That's absolutely great advice. Great advice. Write it down as it happens, keeping that
Right. You'll never,
diary.
you
'Cause-
won't remember
oh,
in a month
goodness.
from now, let alone a year or 2, 3 years from now. You'll never remember it. Other questions?
So there was one in the chat. Will an updated profile help someone get into graduate school?
Well, it depends on what the requirements are for your graduate school. Okay. You need an updated resume. You need to complete the application. You need your GRE score. I will tell you that if you have some personal photos on Facebook, that won't help you get into graduate school. You should erase all that stuff that you have on Facebook and Instagram that's social. Because I will tell you that graduate schools are savvy now, and they're looking up people too, not just to hire. Hiring managers will look for you on Facebook and see what they see. But certainly a graduate school will too. And you don't want them to see pictures of you drunk at the latest party, okay?
So that is a good point. That does negatively impact you. And one other question you had mentioned too, when you're putting volunteer work on, and some of it can help, some of it can't. What would be an example of a volunteer position that you might not want to highlight?
Okay, let's say, like, one of my clients does a lot of volunteer work for her church. You don't want to put something in that's religious based unless you're applying to a religious institution, okay? Because again, there are prejudices, there are biases against one religion or another. You want to avoid that at all cost.
And I'm
Um,
assuming political
and
campaign
political
volunteering.
affiliations, right? If you're volunteering, you're doing campaigning or you're raising funds for XYZ politician, of course, you're going to leave that out. And the same goes for the interview. We don't talk about religion or politics during an interview. It's off the table.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions you want to come off mute and ask, or put it in the chat? Oh, there's one in the chat.
Oh, here, any recommendations for soon to be high school graduates? When should someone start creating history online? Well, okay, let's say you're in high school. Did you belong to any clubs? Did you lead any clubs? Were you on a team? Did you Did you captain a team? Anything that shows leadership or any awards you got in high school, absolutely. You should put those on. Create a LinkedIn profile for yourself online, but only positive stuff. Okay, serious positive stuff. Good question. Oh, I have some friends who want to watch the webinar. Can they view the recording? Yeah, send them
Absolutely.
the email. Send Tracy the email, and she'll send you the recording.
I'm going to go ahead and put my email in the chat as well. If you have any questions for me, you can certainly reach out.
Yes, and just again, for those of you who are maybe interested in getting more career advice, you can call the Savvy Ladies, line, but you'll only get one call. That's it. But I do one free 30-minute consult. So if you're interested in some career advice and you may be thinking of using a career coach, anyway, I will certainly talk to you for 30 minutes for free, and then you can decide if you need any more help or not.